Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Randy Hain. He is the president of Servium Partners and co-founder of the Leadership Foundry. With a successful 30 plus years career in senior leadership roles, corporate talent, and executive search, he is a sought after executive coach and leadership consultant for senior leaders and their teams at some of the best known companies in the US. He is a devoted family man, the author of 10 books, including Essential Wisdom for Leaders of Every Generation. Welcome to the podcast, Randy.
Thanks, Andrea. I appreciate the invitation.
So, Randy, in preparing for this interview, I noticed that you really seem to care a lot about helping people kind of like connect with others, connect with their work, connect with the world around them. Really, this what seems to me to be a really fully human way. Do you
No,
think
thank
that
you.
that's accurate?
It is, and I think it's something that I've worked hard at over the years. But I go back to my mother's influence. She passed away about 14 years ago, but she was always fully present. She was always really focused on making people feel welcome. How can I serve your needs? How can I help you? And I grew up in a house watching her, and I think it stuck with me. But I think I had to mature into that behavior over the last 20 years. And thank you for saying that because I really try to be very intentional about that.
Well, I mean, I was kind of looking through some of your books and, and I thought, man, that the topics that you address are certainly things that are, you know, reflection. That is not something that a lot of people are comfortable with or want to do, but I'm sure that that book probably covers it well. But I mean, like just the fact that you're writing about it is a big deal. Being present, you're being a father, all these different things, and then this book of Essential Wisdom. Um, it's aptly named. It really is. So I guess when you're thinking about the messages that you're wanting to share, in particular, this one about essential wisdom, where does that come from? What sparks in you to say, this is what I really need to say or what I want to talk about?
I became a writer by accident, probably about 14 or 15 years ago. I've always been an avid reader, and I journal a lot. I've always been a guy that journals. And eventually I was encouraged to start blogging. And then eventually a publisher noticed my work and said, you should write a book. And that journey to become a published author was a little awkward for me because I've got my thoughts, and I'll certainly tell you what I think. I try to be very candid, but I wasn't sure, is this really for everybody? Is this for everyone's consumption? And what really connected the dots for me to answer your question is, I always try to be very authentic. And if I'm experiencing it, feeling it, seeing it, think it's important, I've gotten to the place in my life where I want other people to experience it too.
Mm.
I also think that our world is very noisy. There's a lot of buzz and a lot of noise. And I think people are just very distracted. And I think we need to talk about things that matter. So if you read my books or blogs, I hope you'll always find it to have substance to it. There's something there that's going to teach you something, but maybe also make you think. And that's always my goal in any of the writing. So thank you for the kind words, but it is something that I don't see enough of, and I wish there was more substantive writing out there to really provoke us to think about the things that matter.
Mm. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of social media and this quicker attention, this less of a focus maybe world, which I don't know, you can say that that's what we've become, or you can say that that's what we're doing. But I think it's interesting that, and does seem to be a deep need for that substantive work like you're talking about that allows people to stop and pause instead of keep scrolling
Mhm.
and and really stop and think. And I guess I'm wondering, that idea coupled with that need to be fully human. right now? I mean, what do you see as the importance? Why is that so important, especially, I guess, at this point in history?
Well, if I could, I'll take you back very briefly to the name of my business.
Sure.
My executive coaching business is called Servium Partners. Servium is Latin for I will serve. If you remember back in college, we all had to read Milton's Paradise Lost. And there's a very famous part in there where the archangel Michael defends God in heaven against the rebellion of Lucifer. Lucifer said, "Non serviam, I will not serve," and the archangel Michael said, "Serviam, I will serve." And I've always been very drawn to those very powerful words. So I think my mission in life has always been serve others. It's really simple, it's very clear. And I try to organize my coaching, my writing, my speaking, consulting, anything that I do, my fatherhood, my marriage, to how can I serve and help. So hopefully that's going to permeate any written words that you see from me. So if I write something, it's not just to astonish, it's not just to, get something out on LinkedIn because I'm bored. I truly want it to be a teachable moment. And Essential Wisdom was really probably the first of my most recent books that I said, I'm like you probably, Andrea. I read a lot of books. I have to stay very current, but I see a lot of books that are, very long, very strategic, quite frankly, hard to get through. And I wanted to write a book that was filled with digestible, 5 best practices. This is really important and why. And that book reflects that thinking. So I think it all starts though with I really want to help the reader and I hope they get some value from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the wisdom shared, it covers a wide span of things, and I want to get into a few of those things specifically, but is there anything that you're noticing in just the world right now? I guess I'm looking for that culture comment.
Sure.
Where are you at with culture and what you want to bring to it?
So I think right now we live in a very divided culture. You know, we are all in camps. Everybody's got their point of view, their camp. I don't like you because you do this. You don't like me because I do that. And I quite frankly reject that. Probably mostly because of the practice of my faith, probably because of the way I was raised. But I want to practice respectful candor and civility towards everybody. So when I write something, it is by definition going to be inclusive. And I don't mean the narrow political way that we define it today. I mean, I just want everybody to find value in it. So I'm not trying to reach, the left or the right or whoever. I want to reach everybody with a message that hopefully you'd say, I can agree with that. I can buy into that. Of course, I wrote a post years ago that became a chapter in the book. It's called Random Acts of Praise, Kindness, and Gratitude. The acronym is RAPCAG. Of course, who would not rally around the idea of practicing praise, kindness, and gratitude towards other people? Who would not buy into that? So that became one of those essential wisdom nuggets. Of course, we all need to know this. I wrote a chapter about gratitude. Of course, we all need to be grateful. So I try to write things that will bring us together, but I'm also going to write things that I think are true. And sometimes when you adhere to the truth, it's not always popular, and I'm comfortable with that. The very first chapter of that book, I talk about the need for a moral compass. Your moral compass doesn't have to be mine, but I think we all need to be centered in something that points us towards the right thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I began the book by saying, find your moral compass. This is mine. I don't know what yours is, but please have one, because I think we need to talk about that.
Mm. Yeah, because if we're at least if we have that moral compass, and even if it is different than somebody else's, at least there's clarity in that, and
Mhm.
we can have a conversation about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Um, you talk about credibility. One is one of the pieces, one of the chapters that you talk about. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing some advice that you have for people who would like to build their credibility.
There are a couple of maxims I think about credibility that are really important. One is, you can't bestow credibility on someone. You have to earn credibility. I can't just say, Andrea, you are credible. You are. You might be very be the most credible person I know, but I can't give that to you. You have to earn it. And the other thing that's a really interesting maxim about credibility is no one's likely going to tell you if you're not showing up as credible. And I go into great detail in that chapter talking about some best practices to make sure that you are showing up as credible. Here's an example: simple responsiveness and communication. If I email you on Monday and you're super busy and you get back to me the following Monday, even though you had the most legitimate reason in the world, because you didn't respond, I think that you're too busy for me. Clearly, my issues are not important, and you may go down a few notches with me in terms of credibility. If you show up as unprofessional or you slang in a conversation that's inappropriate, if you show up for an interview for a job and you're not dressed professionally, all those are little things. You're being kind of assessed and judged by your audience, which may lower your credibility. So every day, like it or not, and this is really good advice for young professionals, you are rising and maybe falling in terms of credibility. And it doesn't matter what your title is. Everybody can gain and lose credibility daily. Just because you're the EVP or C-level executive of a company, that does not mean that you have credibility. Again, you can gain it and lose it daily. So I thought it was important to write about that. And the first catalyst for that thought really came because I speak on college campuses a lot. And I found that young people going into the workforce and also young professionals often don't pay enough attention to their own credibility. Their social media footprint may be suspect. They may have said something they really regret and it's out there forever. You can't get rid of it. That's another way that you can lose credibility. So those are just some ways that I think about it.
Yeah. Have you ever encountered somebody who really had to work hard to build that back up after losing it?
I have, and it's possible to do it.
Hmm.
I think it probably starts with self-awareness and humility. You need to be aware that you have an issue and you have to have the humility to own it and say, hey, listen, I made a mistake here. I wrote a post recently that will probably wind up in a future book about damaging or repairing a damaged brand.
Hmm.
Because I think at some point, all of us in some way or fashion or form have probably dinged our brand a little bit. But if you're humble and you own it, and you're willing to go and talk to the people who maybe you damaged it with or offended or whatever, I think it is possible to get it back. And I think all of us should be thinking, how am I doing with my brand? Am I living up to the brand that I want? Have I made some mistakes? And if I have, I need to do something about that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of concern and like fear in people that they're concerned that they're going to damage their brand or be written off because they say something or do something. And that often like I think holds people back from speaking out or saying something very clear,
Mhm.
um, which I think is a concern as well.
Well, listen, I think you're on a whole different topic now. I love this because I think you're right. I think it forces people to exercise too much restraint. And what that does is it forces them to show up as inauthentic. They're
Hmm.
just not letting their real selves come out. I may say something wrong, but I assure you it's probably something that I believe in. I've got passion for. I can disagree with you. You may not like everything that I say, but we can be respectful. And you know that, okay, at least I got the real version of you. You know, he was real with me.
Hmm.
Um, I would rather you experience that than me just barely dip my toe into topics and go an inch deep and a mile wide. I want to talk about real issues and be real, but that's also maybe a manifestation of my age, maybe some maturity. When I was 21, maybe I didn't feel as bold as I do in my 50s. So I think it's something that over time we can all gain, but it does take time, experience, and maturity.
Yeah. Yeah, I that makes me think of just the idea that whole idea of putting yourself out there and knowing that you're not going to get it all right.
Mhm.
Knowing that, I mean, that takes a lot of courage if you care. If you don't
Sure.
care, then maybe you just do it and you don't care. But I think most people care and want to, and they are concerned about, well, am I going to get this correct, or am I going to do an excellent job at this thing? And and I think that there are times in some organizations that focus so much on um, doing things correct, or even the people like grow up getting, shooting for their A in
Hmm.
class, and there's more emphasis on that achieving the grade than there is on the process of getting better, and less appetite for that, less appetite for the learning and the growth that has to happen. I don't know, what do you want to say to that? I just feel like such a big thing right now.
A couple of things that come to mind. I think one is I think we've largely lost the ability to let people fail.
Hmm.
I think we are so ready to swoop in and not let someone get their knee skinned up or get a bloody nose. And listen, life is hard. And if we don't let people experience life and fail and make mistakes, they're never going to learn and be self-sufficient and self-reliant. I read this somewhere and I believe it. The 20s are a big lab experiment. We should allow people in their 20s to just learn, just experiment. I have a 23-year-old son who's a year into his career, and I tell him all the time, go experiment, figure out what you like, fail a couple of times. You will figure it out. In my 20s, I worked really hard. I probably didn't do everything right, but it taught me a lot that helped me in my 30s. And then when I got to my 40s, I had a really good sense of where I wanted to go with my career. And in my 50s, I'm doing exactly what I want to do and I love my work. So I spent those first few years just figuring it out. But
Mm.
if we swoop in and we always chase perfection and we run away from the scariness of trying things, we will never grow, never get better, and probably never be authentic. I'll tell you something that you may find interesting. When I was writing my first book many years ago, and this is germane to our discussion, I was really nervous about how will people receive this. This is a book that might be read by thousands of people. How are they going to receive it? So I was a little nervous about screwing up my first book. And my father, who's never written a word for publication, gave me the best advice. He said, Randy, you should write for three people. Really? Tell me more about that, Dad. He said, you should write for God, write something that's pleasing for God, write something for yourself that you're proud of. And then the third person is write for one person in the audience whose life is made better by the work. And it was the best advice. So I bring that audience of three thinking into everything I do. And this is where it ties back to your question. If I'm writing for that audience, I'm not really worried about the masses. I'm not worried about that group over there liking it or this group not liking it. If I'm proud of it, if I feel like it's, something that's pleasing to God, and if I feel like one person's life is made better, I'm good. And it really keeps you grounded to use the audience of three framework.
Hmm. I appreciate that. Yeah. And it seems like um, your faith and your desire to represent your faith or God is an important piece of everything that you're doing. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on people who are, there's a lot of people that are like not sure what they think about God, or, who to follow, what to do, all that kind of stuff. I'm not necessarily looking for the perfect answer, but I'm wondering, how do you speak to somebody who's just feeling lost?
Sure. All I can give anyone is a witness to my life. I can just say my life is made better, and I experience joy and calm and peace and a sense of purpose because my priorities are God, family, and work in that order. That may not be what you believe, but I respect everyone that I encounter, and I simply ask for the same respect in return. I work every day with people who are completely the opposite of me, really the opposite. But I treat everybody with respect and kindness and love. and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. Even if we don't align on every issue, we're never going to align on every issue. So for that person out there that's wondering, what do I believe? Or I'm scared to share my beliefs, or, I completely disagree with what you're saying, Randy. That's okay. It's absolutely okay. But have some believe in something, whatever it is, even if it's just right now, all I can do is believe in myself. That's okay. I'm simply telling you that my life is made better by what I have chosen in terms of my beliefs, and I stand by that.
Mm, love that answer. Okay, so that also leads us into another thing that you talk about in Essential Wisdom, which is chapter 18. You talk about creating a personal mission statement.
Yes.
So, why do you see that as essential wisdom for all generations? And
Mhm.
what process do you recommend for creating a personal mission statement?
Well, if you recall from that chapter, there was a really interesting story that I shared in it. So, about 12 years ago, I was meeting with an executive coaching client, and she was the chief operating officer for a really big nonprofit here in Atlanta. You would know the nonprofit, it's well known. And it was our second coaching meeting. And she, at the time, was 34, I think 33, had an MBA from Duke, just one of the brightest people I've ever met, but also one of those people who makes coffee nervous. You ever been around people that are really edgy all the time? She was one of those people, and I'm really calm all the time. So it was an interesting mix. So she walks into our meeting, our second meeting, and she slams down on the table a two-page document, and she points at it and says, "Hey, I want to talk about mission statements today. And before I tell you what mine is, Randy, I want to know what yours is." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And she gets out her paper and she's ready to take notes on what she believes will be this long discourse on my mission statement. And I said, "You don't have to write it down. It's just two words." "No, no, 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 no. I want your mission statement." I said, "Okay, it's two words. Do you want to hear it?" And she kept arguing because edgy people like to argue. So I finally said, "All right, I'm going to tell you, but if you don't stop arguing with me, I'm just going to end the meeting because we're not getting anywhere." I was kind of half kidding. So she puts down her paper or puts down her pen and she's like, "Tell me, I'm really eager to hear." I said, "Okay, my mission, and I shared this with you earlier, is serve others." And she immediately said, "No, no, no, that can't be a mission, that statement. That's too simple. That's too easy." I said, "Really? The way I was raised by my parents, my faith, my life experience has all taught me that when I serve others, I get everything that I need. So I've organized my life, as I shared earlier. Everything I do, everything in my life is around this idea of serving others. So I get up every morning clear about what's my mission, what's my purpose." So now to answer your question. Oh, by the way, that day, before I let her go, I read her mission statement to her, and it sounded like a master's thesis. I live at the nexus of this. I'm at the intersection of that. I have no idea where she got all this. So that day we got her down to three sentences, and we become good friends. She always tells me to tell the story, always.
Huh.
So she's down to 7 words 12 years later. So why does this matter? If you're a 20-year-old, if you're a 40-year-old, if you're a 70-year-old, doesn't matter. We should all have some sense of why we're doing what we're doing. What are you living for? What is it that you're called to do? What is it, everybody's been given a sort of a mission, a purpose, something that there's a call to greatness in everybody. What's yours? And I think just spending time on, I love these things. I'm really good at these things. I am attracted to these types of activities. Just doing some basic list making, which the chapter encourages, and then discerning and thinking about, okay, where do I feel that I want to really kind of devote my life to? Where do I want to spend all my energy? I gave you a really basic one, serve others. You may have one that's different. I want to help the poor. I want to help the homeless. I want to get married and have a large family. Whatever it is, figure it out, spend your 20s, maybe 30s doing that. But once you get it in your mind, it's the most wonderful thing ever because you wake up knowing, why am I here? I know why I'm here. I'm going to go do that thing. So I'm not sure that's helpful, but that's what works for me. And the leaders that I work with who I encourage to go through this process, they always find it to be edifying and clarifying and really helpful. So,
Mm, yeah. So, what are some of the steps in that process?
It starts with lists. I am good at these things. I really love doing these things. I get pleasure from doing these things. I enjoy these kinds of activities. So starting with likes and passions and skills, those are good lists to make. And then spend time with people that are smarter than you, that maybe have a little bit more wisdom than you, and bounce your thoughts off them. Hey, I'm really drawn to this and this. Do you see that in me too? Do you see that I've got this gift? Go to people that you trust that will be honest with you and start just, bouncing ideas off them. But eventually you're going to wake up one day with an epiphany and it's going to be, I think I'm here to do X. And when you get that day and that day happens, it's a really good feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, I I personally also found it to be really helpful for me to realize why I was so irrationally irritated about some little thing.
Mhm.
Like that actually helped me to see, oh, I really care about this particular thing. And because I care about it, then I started to realize that there was a deeper meaning in that for me personally too.
That's a really good insight. I think you can arrive at your purpose and your mission in a number of different ways. Some people just know from a young age, I am here for this, and I admire those people. It took me a long time to figure it out, but when I got clarity on it,
Yeah.
I feel like life just made more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You can organize your life around it. Uh, you can serve others in so many different ways.
Mhm.
It's not confining. It's just helpful to have that direction, I guess. Yeah.
What's really interesting, though, before we get off that topic, is if you can really not only get a sense of mission and purpose, but start to think about how to align the way that you live your life, how you make a living under that banner. Because
Hmm.
I can make the argument, and it's a pretty good one, everything I do in my life is subservient to this idea of I'm here to serve other people. Everything. And that's really helpful for me to know that everything I do is kind of in that purpose area. So
Mm. So you also talk about mentoring. I mean, this is something that I think is really important, and mentoring the next generation. There's like, I don't know, I wonder what sense of responsibility or desire that you have for encouraging mentorship, especially within organizations. Why do you think that is important?
I think that every generation that is in leadership, and let's say for right now it's millennial, Gen X, and maybe even some baby boomers that are still working. We have an obligation to help Gen Z, Gen Y, the generations coming after us. They are smart. They've got so many gifts. They are a talented group, but we've kind of made a mess of things in some areas. And we've also, though, got some knowledge and wisdom that we need to impart to them. Now, here's the thing, and I talk about this a lot. The worst thing that someone like me can do is sit down with a young professional and wag my finger at them and say, you've screwed up, you haven't figured it out yet, you need to do this. I would never do that. What we need to do is go and engage and not only share wisdom, but learn from them.
Yes.
Mentoring and reverse mentoring are really important. So I've got right now 5 young professional mentees. I typically work with about 5 at a time, all kinds of industries, men, women. I work with all kinds of different people. And I am learning as much from them as I think they're learning from me. And maybe it starts with curiosity. I ask a lot of questions. I really want to learn about you. I want to know about you. And it invites them to be curious with me. Well, Randy, tell me about a time when you did this. Tell me about your experience here and there. So, to answer your question, I think we all have an obligation. I don't care what age you are to give to the generation coming after us, but also to learn from that generation. I think it's a critical responsibility we all have.
Hmm. What about companies who are saying, but we don't have time to deal with that right now?
Those are the companies that strike me as they're probably not going to make it. just to be just to be blunt, Because if you can't find time to develop your next generation of leaders and all you can think about is just surviving day to day, that doesn't strike me as an organization with a future.
Hmm. That's fair.
Yeah. And I think that all of us need to take it seriously. Now, I will tell you the way that plays out because I work with startups and I work with Fortune 25 companies. And what typically happens is it's outsourced.
Hmm.
I say this with humility and a little humor. I've got permanent employment because coaching will always be part of most big companies. So a lot of companies outsource it. I'm the executive coach to that high potential leader that is going to be running things one day. I'm grateful. I love the work. I love it. But I can also realistically and honestly tell you when I was a young leader, coaching wasn't a thing. I
Hmm.
just had to develop the people. I had to find my successor and develop them before I could get promoted. I can say that about my first four jobs.
Yeah.
So I think that what leaders are maybe abandoning, not really paying attention to, is as a leader, our responsibility is to develop talent around us. That is a huge responsibility. I'm grateful as a coach to come alongside and help and be that Sherpa and be that guide. I love the work and I will always do it. But I also think that leaders need to own developing their people.
I really appreciate that statement. Our responsibility as leaders is to develop the talent around us. There are, I can think of a few things that get in the way of that.
Mhm.
And one of those things is time, people feeling overwhelmed, busy, whatever. But I think that there are times when people who are older look at people who are younger and just feel like they don't get them. I
Mhm.
don't speak your language. I don't have any idea how to relate to you. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts around that?
Um, Stereotypes run rampant in our country. Um, there are so many stereotypes about young people. Their faces are stuck in screens. They're not strategic. They don't think. They don't blah, blah, blah. And I have just found that to not really be the case. Yeah, they're more adept at technology than my generation, but I think that they are very bright. And I think they do have deep thoughts. And I think they do want to be developed. In fact, if you look at survey data, young professionals, one of their number
Yeah.
one or number two things is they want to be developed. So if the data is true, and I think it is, and you've got a generation screaming for develop me, let's look past the stereotypes, the memes that you see on Facebook or Twitter, and say, well, maybe that's not true. Maybe if I actually sat down with the young professionals and was humble and asked really good questions, I might actually learn something. And I'm dead serious. I think that we have stereotyped them into this corner, and it's sad. It's almost like there's this huge divide, and we are looking across the divide and just pointing our finger and saying, "You'll never get it. I don't get you. To your point, I don't understand you, and we're never going to come together." But if we don't, they're already starting to lead. You know,
Hmm.
this generation is already moving into those early ranks of leadership, those early levels. They're going to be running the world really soon. I, for one, am excited about that. I really am, because I spend enough time with students and young professionals to get excited. But I think they need our help, and we need to stop stereotyping and start engaging.
So, Randy, you have also written about being a father to a
Mhm.
child with special needs.
Yes.
This is another just real aspect of life about living authentically, connected. Um, some of the people listening, they might have similar dynamics at home in their own homes, or
Mhm.
they might be connected to people at work,
Mhm.
friends that have a similar family dynamic. And I'm just wondering if you have any essential message, essential wisdom that you want to share about that topic in particular.
Absolutely. I'll do my best. I'll start with a moment that everyone you just described has in common, every one of us. For me, it was 24 years ago when our son Alex was diagnosed with autism. He was 25 months old. So that moment, everybody listening right now to your podcast who has a special needs relative or friend, they've all been in that moment. We all know what that looks like. For me and for my wife, it was defining, life defining. It was a mix of both sadness and fear, but also commitment. What are we going to do to help our son? And we have spent the next 24 years that followed helping him, investing in him, getting him what he needed, but also loving him. And he is not only just a member of our family, but a beloved son.
Mm.
And I would give you this easy maxim to kind of consider for anybody listening. You have a choice. You can look at life as, and things like this, as burdens or blessings. I encourage you to look at it as a blessing. Alex is a blessing. He has taught us numerous lessons. He inspires anybody that knows him. I'm a better husband, father, and leader because I have a son with special needs. I could point to his gifts and spend all day talking about it. So I choose to see him as a blessing that has been given to us, and I have been chosen to be his father. So that is one way to see the world. Or we could live in embarrassment or shame, or not want to talk about it, or not want to admit that we've got a child that's got difficulties. And you know what? No one, especially the child, is served well by that thinking. So I encourage everybody to think about that child, that friend, that whatever, that person in your life as a blessing, not a burden.
Mm, love that. Yeah, I think I think of also companies who are hiring people that are just have all kinds of different things to contribute and needs. What message would you want to offer companies as well?
Look at young professionals, young adults, adults, period, that have challenges as really maybe they just think differently. They've got a different way of seeing the world. My son right now is at a global retailer working at the job that he works at 3 or 4 days a week. He's been there almost 8 years. So this company, well-known company, gave him a chance, trained him, and he goes to work every day and it brings him joy. I wrote a chapter in the book about the joy of work that he gets from his job. And it's so inspiring to see. So when a company says, you don't look like everybody else and you don't behave like everybody else, but I wonder what gifts do you have that I could unlock? And you know what? You don't have to do it alone if you're a business person. There are organizations, Autism Speaks, the Tommy Nobis Center, so many great organizations that will help develop and train and help that person be successful in your environment. But it starts with, Andrea, taking a chance. Take a chance. And that's what I would encourage everybody to do.
Hmm. And help unlock those gifts. I love that.
Yes.
Um, so Randy, and this has been just a lovely conversation, and I do appreciate this. There's a sense of groundedness and connectedness that you possess and that you share with your voice. And so first, I have two more questions for you. First of all, where can people find you and your books?
Sure. All my books are on Amazon, so you can find them all there. And probably the best two ways to reach me, find me, see me is on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. If you reference the show, I'll know that's how you found me. And also my website, which is serviumpartners.com. And then my other business is myleadershipfoundry.com, which I own with another coach. But those are the ways to see the writing, see what I'm up to. I write every week, so there's always something new blog posts out there. But those are the best ways.
Yeah. And so my last question, this is the Voice of Influence podcast. What last piece of advice would you want to give somebody who would like to have a voice of influence?
I think I'm going to try to give you a quick answer, but it may be more complicated than that.
That's
I
okay.
think it starts by being authentic. Don't try to be a voice of influence with someone else's voice. Have your own voice. So look in the mirror, be really clear about who you are, determine what it is that you've got to say, and if you believe it, and you have conviction about it, then put it out there. And it doesn't matter if everybody doesn't love it. Go back to my maxim earlier, the audience of three. If you've got that audience in mind, it's God, it's you, it's one person whose life is made better. Start there. But if you believe it and you have conviction about it, then put it out there. But again, be authentic about it. I think that's the best advice I can give a future influencer. Have your voice.
Hmm. Well, thank you very much for being a voice of influence for our listeners today. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure and I really enjoyed the conversation.